Welcome, ladies, to Women and Blended Families. This is our holiday edition with our December conversation, and we're going to talk about all things blended and the holidays. We know this can be a stressful time of year, especially for step families. So, we want to offer some practical tips and ideas and also share our experiences to help you find joy and contentment, even in the midst of a busy season. I am so excited about our guest today. I actually have two ladies who are joining me. Both of them have walked the blended family journey for quite some time, and I know you are going to be blessed by their conversation. But before we start, I want to hear from you. Where are you at with your Christmas shopping? I know we probably have some overachievers out there who may have already finished, but leave a comment and tell me where you're from and how much progress you have made on your shopping. Are you at 0%? I hope not. 25%, maybe 50, or maybe you're at 100. I am certainly not. I've started mine, but I am not finished. So throw up some comments. I want to hear from you. I want to know where you are at with location in the country and also your shopping. And while you're thinking about that, be sure to tag a friend who you know could benefit from our conversation. Even if they can't join us now, they can always watch the recorded version later. So tag your friends and people who could benefit from this conversation today about everything related to the holidays and blended families. And I'm about to bring our guests on, but I see some comments coming in. Cindy is finished. I'm so jealous, Cindy. Wow, good for you. Kudos. You are an organized woman, obviously, to be finished with your Christmas shopping. Okay, who else is going to tell me where you at? Stacy is 70% done. That's pretty good. This is December the 12th. We still have a little bit of time left, but man, it's getting close to needing to get all that done. And in blended families, sometimes we celebrate early. We may not celebrate on the exact day of Christmas, trying to manage that routine with the kids and stepkids and former spouses. And so sometimes we have to even get our shopping done earlier. So who else is going to tell me, even if you aren't very far along, there'll be no judgment here. Nicole is 25% done. Okay, Nicole, yeah, you got a little bit to go still. That's probably about where I'm at, actually. And I don't have any gifts wrapped yet. So I have my pretty Christmas tree up with no gifts under it. All right, I'm going to bring our guests on, but I want you to continue. Add comments, tell me where you're at with your shopping, and even where you're listening from, where you're watching from today. So, our first guest is Dr. Janice Love. Janice is a licensed Christian counselor and coach. She's the CEO of Pearls Perfected Institute, equipping Christian women to transform troubles from bad to blessed. I love that. She's an author, and she and her husband Bobby have 8 children in their blended family. You heard that correctly, 8. And she has 2 grandchildren and 2 great grandchildren. Welcome, Janice.
Thanks, Kayla. I'm so glad to be here.
So glad to have you with us. And then our second guest is Summer Butler. Summer is an author, a speaker, and a Bible study leader. She walks with women, couples, and teens through the struggles of blended family life. Summer grew up in a blended family, and she and her husband, Andy, have a yours and ours blended family. Welcome to you, Summer.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being with us. Ladies, I'm so thankful to have you join. I know that you are going to bless these ladies with your conversation as we talk about the holidays. Okay, I've seen a few more comments here about we've got people watching from Orlando, Oregon, Green Bay, Wisconsin, Texas, New York. I love that. Love to see ladies watching from around the country, and many of them still working on their Christmas shopping, but that's okay. We don't have to be there yet. So, Summer and Janice, before we start, I wonder where you're at with your shopping. Now, Janice, you have a lot of people to buy for. So, how are you doing with that?
I'm about 10% actually, Kayla.
10%. I feel so much better. Okay. How about you, Summer?
Well, shopping wise, am done and we are all wrapped, but
Wow.
the tree is not decorated. And I'll tell you why. So when we get real trees, my husband grew up on a tree farm, and the only child that cares to help me decorate the tree is a freshman in college this year. And so when we got the tree up, I was like, what do I do? How do I put the lights on? And I sent him a picture of the naked tree, and he said, well, you wait for me. That's what you do. So I was like, you know what? That's the key to, I think, a step family holiday is being flexible and allowing the kids to come back and, give their little touches to things. So I have no tree decorations, but I do have gifts under it.
I think that's pretty sweet, though, that your stepson is saying, wait till I come back and let me be part of it. That's pretty sweet, Summer.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and that is one of the things about a step family holiday is flexibility is huge. I think that'll probably come up again, but that is one of the things that I have certainly learned through my journey in a blended family, that we do have to be flexible. Variables change, people move back and forth, and things change. So we'll get started and I'll share some questions here, but I want to tell the ladies that are watching us to feel free to put some questions in the comments, and we will answer them live throughout our conversation. You've got some veterans here who understand step family life well, and so I just want to encourage those that are participating in the live to put some questions in the comments, and we will answer those and help you with whatever questions that you have specifically for holidays. All right. Schedules can really ramp up this time of year for everyone, but especially for blended families. We already have complex variables, right? And then the holidays can also bring heightened emotions, and it can just complicate things. So, ladies, I would love to hear from you 1 or 2 tips that you have discovered that help you manage the stress of the holidays with these heightened emotions and still be able to experience peace during this season. So, Janice, I want to start with you first. I wonder what you would say. How would you answer that?
I would say that when I keep the focus on Jesus, it changes everything. First of all, I look at the perspective that it's Jesus's birthday, right? And so Why am I focused on myself when it's Jesus's birthday? It seems weird to ask somebody for a gift on Jesus's birthday. So
Right.
with my husband being a pastor, we constantly remind our kids that it's Jesus's birthday. And so my
Mhm.
gift to Jesus is going to be that I'm going to have peace and I'm going to experience joy because it's not about him. So when
Right.
I take my emotions out of it and focus on him, then it doesn't seem to be as much of a challenge. So
Yeah.
when I'm about to get frustrated with one of the kids complaining about something, then I'm going to say, "Look, it's about Jesus, not about
Mhm.
you, not about
Right.
me either."
Yeah.
That's the thing that works for me.
I like that. And one of the things that I thought about as you were talking about it is that also we can ask Jesus to help us on
Mhm,
days that we are struggling or we're
mhm,
stressed or we're about to lose it. We can step back and say,
mhm.
we're celebrating Jesus, and Jesus, I could use some help here. And we
Exactly.
know that he wants to be part of our lives. He wants us to have a relationship, and that can definitely be part of the season
Mhm,
for us. Yeah, that's
mhm.
great. Summer, what would you add to that?
Well, just to add on, I think a practical tip for me in those moments where I need to pray for Jesus to bring peace to the moment,
Mhm.
um, I question, well, first, I'll give myself permission to have a timeout, right? Take myself
Oh,
to the
yeah.
bedroom, give
Mhm,
myself permission to have a timeout, take some still time, and then ask myself, am I desiring peace or power in this moment? And I
Mm,
tend to lean control girl and want to have control of the holidays and the schedules and the power of what the day and the weeks are going to look like around the holidays. And that in a step family is not possible, and that
mhm.
in real life is never possible either, but
mhm,
exasperated around the holidays. So I give myself permission to take a pause and I step back and really question, like, hey, where's my heart right now? And
Mhm.
if, like Dr. Janice said, if we're really focusing on the reason for the holiday, um, the thing that keeps coming to my mind this year is how can I prepare him room? And how can I prepare my heart to prepare him room in our home? And
Right.
that, in this season for us, the kiddos, the older two stepsons are adults now. And so this has been a new transition challenge, I guess, for us to let
Mhm.
them be adults and give them grace over guilt for what they want their plans to look like.
Right.
And so that's another thing that I'm currently working on. But giving myself permission to pause is, I think, a practical piece of advice.
Yeah, I like that. And again, when we mentioned flexibility earlier, that's exactly what you're talking about because I'm sure with both of the boys grown, you still have one at home. I know you have a 10-year-old at home, but you have two that are out of the house. And so it does change everything, doesn't it?
It
And
does.
we can't control what they're going to do as far as their schedules as well, especially if we have worked under the confines of a divorce decree for many years, which some of us
mhm.
have. And then when they turn 18 and it's not in effect anymore, then it definitely changes. And we have to work on the lack of control, which is a perceived thing oftentimes anyway, though, but it certainly can play a role. So, yeah, that's great. Well, ladies, another thing that often plays into blended family holidays is grief and
Mm.
sadness. It's a common emotion for blended families, especially in the early years. I mean, perhaps kids are remembering when Christmas was celebrated with both of the parents in the same home. Or even as adults, maybe we're grieving over Christmases past when life just didn't feel quite so complicated. And I wonder if you could give input on how do we hold on to the joy of the season and deal with our grief at the same time? Can the two coexist? Can we have joy of the season and celebrate the season while we are still experiencing grief? Summer, you want to start with that one? Give us.
Yeah, I do. I think the way that we can do that best is to acknowledge instead of ignore what is actually showing up in the moments. And so, acknowledging, like, hey, you know what? I'm really sad right now. Here's why. And maybe, like in our situation, my husband has lost both of his parents and his mother more recently.
Mm,
And while it's been a couple years, there's never, I think, one of the tricks with grief is that it never goes away. It just comes and goes, right? And so it doesn't even go in a cyclical process. It goes just in waves. And
Mhm.
he's really struggled this Christmas as opposed to feeling different last Christmas. And so just
Wow.
acknowledging that those
Mhm.
emotions are there and naming
Mhm.
them for what they are without judgment, and just knowing like, hey, some of this is normal for right now, and some of this is, and just not putting labels on it. We don't want to judge any type of grief. Um,
Mhm.
but also, like Dr. Janice said, if we can focus on who gives us that eternal life, or outside of just these little picture times and days, let's look at the big picture, and not focusing on the little details, but acknowledging, like, hey, this is a rough season for me, and that's okay. I can
Mhm.
still find joy in the little moments because the big picture is such of joy and such blessings that we get because Jesus did come for us during this time.
Right. And I think it's really normal that we do struggle a little bit with balancing these two, still having joy and dealing with our grief at the same time. They can coexist. And that is the thing that I think can be hard to recognize sometimes. Janice, what would you say to that?
Well, in our family, interestingly, we have two forms of grief going on. First of
Mm,
all, was the grief of the traditions that the kids might have had in their other families. And so, what we
yes.
did back when they were young is we established our own new traditions, so that and let them have a lot of input in that, so they'd be excited about it. So that
Yeah,
kind of took away some of that. This is what we used to do, kind of thing.
right.
And the other thing in our and it's worked perfectly. Trust me, it's worked perfectly since they've established their own traditions. But the other piece of grief that we have to deal with in our family is that my bonus children, their mother passed away
Mm,
years ago
okay.
in the month of November, like right after Thanksgiving. And her birthday is also that time as well.
Oh
So we
gosh.
allow them to have their feelings. We allow
Yeah.
them to have that time. We
Mm,
also, encourage them to have those wonderful memories that they had of their mother, and that's just to help. And again, we try to infuse a lot of fun into our holidays,
oh,
and
I
so
love
that
that.
helps. Yeah, that
Yeah.
that helps to definitely help with that grief on both sides of the equation.
So what do you do for fun? What are things it sounds like you're very intentional with that. Do you have, just certain things, maybe they're part of your traditions that you do?
Well, one of the fun things that we started when our children were young was that to kind of get them to all feel like we're all one big family. With 8 children, that's a lot, right? So
Right.
to make them all feel like we're one family, and they're going to want to purchase a gift for everybody in the family. Something we used to do, and again, this was years ago because we've been married 21 years. We would give the kids a budget of $10,
Okay.
and they had to go to the dollar store and find something for everybody in the family. And that covered
Wow.
everybody.
Okay.
And so they got really creative with the things that they would get. You can find lots of things in the dollar store.
Oh, sure. Right.
And yeah, and they had to think about the personality of the person they were buying for. So now that everybody's grown and we don't have to give them the money anymore, now they're very they're very creative about what they do for each other. So it's always hilarious just to see the presents that show up. It might be, a 4-pack roll of toilet paper or something, It's so much fun just to guess what we're gonna have when they open up these gifts. So
Right.
that's one way we have fun in the holiday.
Yeah, and that is fun, and everybody gets to participate,
Mhm.
and all of that is good and healthy for continuing to build relationships in your blended family. So, here's what one of our viewers said. One of my favorite sayings after losing a loved one near the holiday is that grief and gratitude can sit at the same table. That is
Amen.
so true, and I think that's a good thing to remember. Okay, here's a question that's come in. Any suggestions for dealing with my husband's cancer treatment with extreme fatigue and is wanting to have his adult kids to visit? He doesn't seem to have boundaries with them, and a recent visit meant he spent too much time with them, and then I paid the penalty because he didn't have energy for our relationship. When do y'all
Hmm.
want to comment on that? Give us some suggestions.
Well, something I used to always remember it was that I'm gonna be here all the time. and
Mhm.
the kids would only come over on weekends, right? So he would only roughly get, 48 hours with his children.
Right.
So one of the things to do is to not necessarily make a big deal about the children visiting, because right now, this very moment, my husband's dealing with some back trouble,
Oh,
and the
goodness.
kids
Mm,
definitely want to be a support. So
right.
make it a casual, fun thing. Maybe they're going to come over and eat popcorn with them, and stay in pajamas even for the holiday. Everybody wear pajamas, okay? Let's have some fun here.
Right.
And again, take self out of it again,
Mhm.
because realize that he needs that time with his children, and
Right.
realize the holidays are going to be gone and over with, right?
Mhm. Right.
It's going to be over real
Mhm.
soon, and things will get back to normal. So take yourself out of it and
Yeah.
really think about his need, especially what he's dealing with, that he
Mhm.
wants and needs to spend time with his children.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's very realistic and understandable that he's wanting time with his children. And yeah, I completely agree. Summer, do you have anything to add to that?
I don't. I totally agree. I think, if we can loosen up on the holidays specifically, if the
Mhm.
boundary issue is an issue outside of the holidays, that's a different conversation, maybe for a
Yeah.
different time.
Right.
And if that needs a third party, to mediate that or help facilitate that conversation, but I do think, like you said, Dr. Janice, if he's struggling with cancer treatment and he's probably got some questions in his mind that might be worth exploring as a wife. Like,
Mhm.
hey, how are you feeling? What is it that impacts your desire to want the kids around without boundaries, or maybe even leaving out that assumption or judgment? And then if it becomes another prolonged issue outside of the holidays, it's like Dr. Janice said, the holidays come and go. It's not unless they're adult children wanting to move back in, that's a whole
Mhm.
different conversation. But
Right.
um,
Right. One of the things that I think and talk about a lot is the value of grace in relationships. And I think in situations like this, it's important just to remember to offer grace even when situations aren't perfect, and allow just conversation to flow, because I'm sure there are just hard dynamics for both of the couple, for the one dealing in the cancer treatment, and then obviously for the spouse who is probably playing a caregiver role. So grace for yourself, and grace for each other, and grace for those adult kids who are coming to visit. I just have found that grace goes a long ways in relationships. All right, let's move into another question. So, both of y'all have adult children, and Janice, you have grandchildren and even great grandchildren. I wonder, and Summer, you've talked a little bit about this and just how your situation has changed this year, but for especially for you, Janice, who has several that I'm assuming you've got to negotiate the schedule. So have y'all found it a challenge to figure out how to celebrate the holiday together? Do you have suggestions on those who might be really struggling with, we just can't get this schedule to work, our adult kids aren't being cooperative? Yeah, how would you speak to that?
So what we did a long time ago, because again, we're trying to juggle basically three households in a
Mm,
sense. What we did was we said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to establish a brunch. So every year we'll have a brunch that starts at 11 or 12. And then you have the entire rest of the day to do anything you want to do. If you want to stay here and hang with us, fine. If you want to go visit grandma, if you want to go visit other friends, or even your boyfriend or girlfriend's family, then go for it. So our time
right.
is 11 to 1. And hey, if you can make it, great. If not, your gift will be here for you, and there'll be some food left over. So that tends to work for us, just having that time, so they know every year what time we're going to have our
That's
gathering,
great.
and
Yeah.
if they can make decisions from there.
And do most of the time, does everybody come? Were they able to work it out for the most part?
Yeah, everybody comes. Those who are living here in the area.
Yeah. And that's how we are. We have kids out of state. In fact, we have one child and son in law out of the country who certainly we won't see, but we're kind of the same way. If you pick a certain time and then you stay with it every year, then they know ahead of time, because that's another
Hmm.
practical tip for blended families is plan ahead. If you don't
Right.
have your decisions made yet about Christmas Day or Christmas Eve or what the schedule with the kids is, get on it, because the sooner that you can work that out with the other family, the better it's going to be. And you're not trying to scramble right there at the end. So just as y'all do, you throw it out there every year. This is what we're doing. We'd love to have you. But I also like the fact that you don't put a bunch of pressure on them. You don't guilt trip them. You don't make it a big deal if they don't come. All of those things, we're wanting to build long-term relationships. We always want to keep our focus on the long term. And so what are we doing in the present that is going to benefit everybody in the long term? And in my opinion, that's exactly what y'all are doing in your family, Janice. So I love that. Summer, how about y'all? Do you have thoughts about how you've managed this with adult kids? You don't have any grandkids, right?
I hope not.
Yeah, nobody's married yet, so I hope not too.
Not yet. A couple years ago, we established December 23rd as our Christmas Day, like for the whole family, because since I'm also part of a step family, I have my mom's home, my dad's home, and then the boys have our home and their other home. And so there's just like 4 potential homes that we could feel guilted into visiting on Christmas Day, right? And that's what I think stepkids often feel, is guilt when they don't show up as expected, or when we have these expectations of them. And so what I learned as a stepchild, and then walking into the season where the boys are getting older, and they get to choose what their schedule looks like, is like, hey, let's set aside a new family tradition and a one-stop shop. Right? Like, here's where both sets of my parents get to come and choose to, and I'm thankful for that, because they can put their differences aside and show up just to be a family on that day. And then we have our family there, and the boys can celebrate Christmas. And that way they're not guilted, and they're given grace on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day to go where they feel they want to carry on their traditions. Their mom has beautiful traditions in her home. And then we kind of created our own, much like you were saying, Dr. Janice, stockings are like a huge deal for us. And so
really?
So the kids, they like love that the most. And so they take up like a whole couch. Each stocking is a really big deal. And so the years that we didn't have the boys Christmas morning, we would save Eli's stocking for the afternoon. And so that way they all 3 got to do something together. So Eli could still open his presents in the morning, and the boys, when they would come in the afternoon, would open their gifts, but they all 3 experienced the stockings together. So we just tried to find moments of tangible ways that they could connect, and we could still have joy in the day of Christmas, while juggling the schedule. So we have set, like you said, we've planned ahead, and now the boys know this year our oldest won't be home. He's in the Marine Corps undergoing some training right now. But we did mail him a stocking and his girlfriend a stocking, because that's a big deal. And so we just they know December 23rd is our Christmas Day. And then they kind of have their own little expectation for the stockings, which I love, because that's our little tradition.
Yeah. And I think in order to make that work, then you also are recognizing this is not about me. I'm sure if it were your choice, you would rather everybody be together on December the 25th. And yet we do have to make sacrifices as the adults and accommodate the kids and their own schedules and routines also. So I think that's really what you're illustrating, part of what y'all do, Summer. And that's important. That's very important. Stacy has commented, we were talking about traditions, and she said the traditions that our girls chose have been the ones to stick. When my husband and I tried to create a tradition, it failed every time. I don't know if y'all have experienced that, but we had some of those same experiences. And I will say, if you start a tradition and it doesn't work, then just let it go. And nobody says that it's cast in stone that, oh, well, we did this 1 or 2 years, we got to keep doing it. No, you don't. If it doesn't work, just let it go. But I think key is that we let them participate as we set traditions. New traditions are, I think they're great. Traditions are all about helping find belonging in a blended family. And that's part of why traditions can be so important, in my opinion. All right, here's another question. So Tasha is asking about tips. when everyone is not living in the same city versus everyone being in the same area. So, not sure if she's asking, how do we navigate it when they're not living in the same city? And perhaps there are some who are in the same area. Janice, I think you were talking about this a little
Uh-huh.
bit. You must have kids that don't live in the same area, right?
Yeah, I do. And the best thing that ever happened during the pandemic was that we realized that Zoom could be used for family events,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
So we FaceTime, we Zoom. It's the same way that I stay connected with my sisters, is that
Yes.
we use the technology that we
Uh-huh.
have, and there's no limit on time. Just
Mhm.
hang out
Right.
and be on Zoom.
Yeah. And I was going to suggest that too. So for our daughter and son-in-law who are out of the country, and there
Mhm.
is a 13-hour time difference between us
Wow.
and them, we have to get creative. But
Mhm.
we will do a FaceTime Live at some point on Christmas Day to include them. And yes, we can still, we're not going to all be in the same room together, but it doesn't mean that we can't celebrate together and still be in relationship with these other family members. So, yeah, Tasha said you got her question right. Okay, I'm glad to know that. So, I hope that was helpful for you. All right, I want to run through just some very practical things now. We've talked about some of them. And I do want to mention that we have a podcast that Ron and I did. It's podcast number 120 on blended family Christmas tips to reduce holiday stress. So, some of these are included in this podcast, but I want for us ladies to talk about some of these just very practical tips. I'm gonna offer some of them, and then if there's one of them that just resonates with you and you have a family story to match it, then I want you to share. But these are a common things that I think can really make a difference with blended families at the holidays. One of them we've already talked about: make your plans early. Adjust your expectations. That can be a
Mhm.
big one. We could talk a lot about if our expectations are misaligned, then it can really create additional heightened emotions. And so we need to be careful with our expectations. Be flexible, especially with former spouses. Our friend Brenda Stewart says, "Blessed are the flexible, for they won't snap." I love that. Blessed are the flexible, for they won't snap. Very appropriate. Keep a gratitude journal. I have been big on gratitude journals, especially during hard seasons. I have found it's really helpful for me. Maybe start in the morning or in the evening, just write one or two things that I am thankful for. And it helps me to focus on what's going well instead of focusing on what's not going so well. So that's been helpful for me. And then traditions. And I have some more, but let's just, before I go on, I want to hear from you ladies. What resonates with you? What could you share in regards to those practical tips?
I would jump in there and say, regarding flexibility, I know that um, a lot of times kids are bothered sometimes about the fact that they have to go to maybe two different houses.
Right. Hmm.
So what I had stressed to my daughter at a very young age was that, hey, guess what? You get two Christmases. You get two sets of gifts. And
Right.
so she got excited about that, looking at it from that perspective. And so she started bragging to one of her friends about that. She gets two Christmases and two gifts, two sets of gifts. And so her friend was so jealous of that. She went home and said to her parents, I want you all to get a divorce so I can have two Christmases.
You are
So,
kidding.
so it's really about how you look at it, right?
How you present it is what it sounds like.
Yeah. So
Wow.
yeah. So again, sometimes it's just this perspective that the kids are looking at,
Right.
that can change the whole picture. So flexibility
Yes.
and look at things differently.
And how we talk about it, what we have to
Exactly.
say can influence them. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. Summer, what would you say? Any of those things resonate with you?
Yeah, they did. I think I would throw in having compassion over comparison
Oh, that's
and
good.
Good.
really
Mhm.
thinking about just having compassion for everybody in the step
Right.
family, from the
Mhm.
children to the other home, and just really realizing like, hey, this isn't just tough for me, right? This is
Mhm.
tough for everybody.
Right.
And if I can have compassion instead of comparing like how much time they get versus how much time
Right.
I get versus,
Right.
where the children choose when they get to
Mhm.
do that, and not taking that personal and understanding, you know, the children are trying to navigate this too. So it's
Yeah.
exactly what you said earlier. It's grace over guilt. It's
Mhm.
compassion over comparison, and just keeping
Mhm.
ourselves aligned with where we're at, acknowledging it, giving ourselves permission to step aside and name what it is we're going through without judgment.
Mhm.
Um, but understanding, feeling normalized that, hey, this season's tough. Seasons are tough, but
I
they
agree.
always come and go. I
Uh-huh.
think having the flexibility and understanding that this season will come and go as well. And next season, we can always learn and do different, figure out
Right.
what worked and what didn't, and
Mhm.
be flexible enough to let go of the things that didn't serve us last season.
And recognize that some seasons are going to be harder than others. Sometimes there's just dynamics that are going on that kind of set us up to have a difficult holiday season. But I think if we keep it in perspective, that
Mhm.
just because we've had one hard season doesn't mean that's what every season's going to look like. But in the early years, you don't really have that perspective to be able to draw on. So it can be really discouraging, and you can just begin to go down this doomsday hill of I can't do this blended family life. It's too hard. But if we can keep it in perspective, because I will say we've had 27 Christmases together now as a blended family, and some of them were super hard. And
Mhm.
yet, some of them have been really good. And especially as our kids are now adults, and we do some of the same fun things of them buying for each other and
Mhm.
experiencing relationships that are in a different place today. They're in a good place. And so all of that can change. And we don't want to just consider this is a hard season and it's never going to get better, because it can. It can definitely get better. So we've
Yeah.
had another question come in. How would you handle something like stockings or addressing gifts? For example, I have a biological son and my husband has two bio kids, and the stockings at our house say dad, and then mine is my first name, Val. This doesn't seem fair. Like, I know I am not my stepkid's mom, but I am my son's mom. So wouldn't I be entitled to a stocking that says mom? Why are we always the least respected person in the home?
Can I
Oh,
take that?
bless you.
Yeah.
Yes. And I just want to have
Please.
compassion first for her and say that's a difficult place. Yes. Summer, go.
Okay, so while I told you already we have a naked tree, I did hang up our stockings last week, and we have name tags on all of them. And I thought to myself, I'm so thankful that I did this before this live stream, because it reminded me of our first years. And our tags say Daddy, Mommy, Patriot, Creed, Eli. And I remember the wrestle that I had with myself as to what do I put on my tag? What is it that I should put on there? And what I realize now that I should have done different then was involved my stepkids in the decision. I think that I could have asked them. And for us, I said, hey, what would make you most comfortable? Is it mom on one side and Summer on the other? Because they call me Summer. They don't call me
Mhm,
mom. They shouldn't. I'm not their
mhm.
mom. And so I still don't, first of all, I don't know the answer, but I do have so much compassion for you, because I think um, it is, I've tried to reframe that, in that it's not that I don't receive the respect. It is, what part of my worth am I placing in the title?
Mm,
And if it matters most that I'm called mom, then I'm idolizing a title and not necessarily who God has called me to be in their life. And so if I'm just Summer, that's showing some judgment, right? So I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer necessarily. I think the question is, um, dig into that, get curious about your feelings around your feeling less than,
mm,
because I want to speak into you that you are not a title. You are
mhm,
called by Christ to be part of these children's lives, and it's not the title on the tag that matters. It's who you show up to show them in this season. And
mhm.
so I can totally understand. I obviously was meant to put those up for a reason, and it was to answer your question, in that, gosh, this is hard.
It is hard.
And
Mm.
I think for me, I would have gone back and asked the kiddos, like, gosh, this is weird. What do I put on there? And kind of make it just a fun little way that they can give input into the blended
Mhm,
family.
mhm. Yeah.
For
Janice.
us, we just did something very, very simple. We put our first names on there, and then we put mom or dad in parentheses, like it's a nickname.
Okay.
And so that tended to not cause any problems because again, even I'm a mother to my children, and so
Mhm.
it would be odd for them just to see first name. So we just did it like a nickname.
Mhm.
I love that.
Yeah, I like that, and I agree. I mean, obviously, there's a biological son in the home, so
Mhm,
it would be odd to just have your name on there. And so we've done the same thing. We just have first names on all of them. I mean, my stocking
mhm,
has Gayla, and my
mhm.
husband's stocking has Randy. We are both biological parents and step parents.
Right.
So I think you just want to be creative about it and want to go back. Probably what I would suggest, have a conversation with your husband about it, because I do think that you want to address the feelings that you are experiencing and have him help you talk through what is the best thing to do here. But just make sure that your husband does understand that you're struggling with this. Sometimes we tend to hold things in instead of talking them out, and we
Mhm.
do want to process them so that we come up with a solution that seems fair for all of us. So I just would encourage you to do that. And we've had another question come in. As a new blended family of 4 years, the holidays bring a lot of emotions to the surface. I totally agree with that. This Christmas, a unique situation has come. My husband is away for military training. My stepchildren's mother has decided to keep the kids with her outside of the agreed upon court order. Unfortunately, it will take some time to have this issue addressed. Our children are 8, 9, and 2 years old. Any suggestions on how I can support my husband who feels helpless because he's away, and my kids who unfortunately might go months without seeing each other?
Wow. Uh, so one of the things to do is just be flexible when it comes to what the law says you're supposed to do for holidays.
Right.
So what we would do is be respectful of the other bio parent and have that conversation in advance.
Yes.
So
Mhm.
so we're scheduled to have them this Christmas, but what time would you like to have
Mhm.
them? Rather than again going through all that mumbo jumbo, what's in the divorce decree, to really be creative. And something that I've respected over the years is that children like to wake up on Christmas morning in the house that they live in.
Mhm. I agree. Mhm.
That's just a known fact. And so
Mhm.
be respectful of that.
Mhm.
Again, it's not about you. And in the case where they won't be able to see their father anyway, they may feel more comfortable
Mhm.
just spending that time at home with their mother. You all set a time where you're going to celebrate Christmas when dad is home. Again,
Mhm.
forget about the divorce decree and all the legal stuff that's out there, and work together to make it a great day for the kids.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that that goes along with another tip, really, that I would share, which is in regards to really be careful that we're also acknowledging the needs of our children, and that sometimes we forget that and the emotions that they're experiencing this time of year also. And so we want to consider our kids' needs as we make decisions about where they're going to be. So we are going to have to wrap it up, ladies. I'm going to just give a couple of more tips. We're not going to have time to talk about them, but these are just some more practical tips, in my opinion, that you want to make sure through these holidays. Make time for date night with your spouse. Really continue to nurture your couple relationship, because you don't want it to get lost in the middle of while you're celebrating this season. And then, as Janice started us off from the very start, I would say walk closely with Jesus. Let him be your guide and your strength for this season, because really that's what we need to stay focused on as we celebrate the holiday season. One of my favorite scriptures this time of year, Psalm 73:26, that says, "My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever." Thank you for joining us, Summer and Janice. You guys have been a blessing, and I hope that you and your families have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you,
Thank
Gayla.
you. Same to you, Gayla.
And ladies, make plans to join us next month for our first live stream of the year on January the 9th of 2024. I'm excited to welcome popular speaker and author Lori Short to our conversation. You'll hear practical and spiritual advice on how to create blended family relationships that go the distance. It'll be a great conversation to get our new year off to a good start. So don't miss out on that. God bless you, ladies. Thank you for joining us. As we celebrate the birth of our Savior this month, remember, your holiday season can be meaningful and joyful even if it isn't perfect. To those who are faithful, God shows himself faithful. Keep pressing on and see you next time.